Welcome, sleepless and curious listener, to the new season of our Lo-Fi Bible podcast. If you thought Isaac's family was complicated, get ready, because now we're diving into the life of Joseph, the most famous dreamer of the Old Testament. You know those stories of big families, jealous siblings, and dreams no one understands. Well, here you'll find plenty of that. This season, you'll meet the boy who got a colorful robe, lost his peace at home, and ended up in Egypt, all before he even became an adult. You'll discover how dreams can turn into nightmares, how jealousy can change destinies, and how even a prison routine can make for great bedtime stories. So, turn off the lights, fluff your pillow, and get ready to travel through deserts, slave markets, Egyptian palaces, and damp prisons, all without leaving your room. And, of course, only subscribe if you really like Bible stories with a touch of humor, unexpected questions, and that perfect lo-fi rhythm to help you relax. Have you ever imagined waking up one day and realizing your brothers want to sell you? Well, Joseph hadn't either. Think you've had a weird dream? Wait until you hear Joseph's. Was life in Egypt just pyramids and parties? Or was there more sand and drama than you can imagine? If you think a big family means confusion, get ready to meet Joseph's brothers. And if you think you've ever been embarrassed in front of others, just wait until you hear how Joseph interpreted dreams in prison. If you're ready to embark on this journey, get comfortable, because Joseph's saga is just beginning, and honestly, no one knows where it will end. Episode 1: Joseph's childhood and Jacob's favoritism. Imagine waking up in a house where every breakfast feels like a competition to get your dad's attention. Now multiply that by 12 brothers. That was the vibe in Jacob's house. And if you think sibling rivalry is just a soap opera thing, wait until you meet today's star, Joseph, the ultimate favorite child. Joseph was Jacob's second youngest son, but in his father's heart, he might as well have been the first. And it wasn't exactly a secret. Jacob was not subtle about it. He didn't just say Joseph was special. He gave the kid a colorful robe, not just a cool shirt, but basically a walking billboard of favoritism. You know that gift that makes all the other siblings glare at you? That was Joseph, strutting around the house in his robe like he was at a desert fashion week. Now, pause and think. Have you ever gotten a gift that made everyone look at you funny? If yes, congrats. You know a bit about how Joseph felt. If not, just imagine sitting at the lunch table with 11 brothers staring at you like you're the last piece of cake. Jacob, meanwhile, either didn't notice or just ignored the heavy atmosphere. Maybe he thought love could be measured in meters of colorful fabric. Or maybe he was just trying to make up for all the family drama he'd lived through with his own brother Esau. Yes, Jacob was no stranger to favoritism, but now he was the one dealing the cards. And don't think Joseph's mother, Rachel, was left out of this story. She was Jacob's great love, which only made the favoritism stronger. While the other mothers probably exchanged looks like here we go again. Rachel watched it all with the smile of someone who knows her son will get the best piece of lamb at dinner. Now, let's talk about Joseph. He was a literal dreamer. He liked to share everything he saw, felt, and dreamed. You know that kid who narrates their whole day like it's a reality show? That was Joseph. And of course, This only made his brothers even more annoyed. Nobody likes to hear how great someone else's life is every day, especially when that someone is wearing a flashy robe. But before you judge Joseph's brothers, think about it. Have you ever felt left out? Ever thought someone in your family got more attention than you? The brothers' jealousy wasn't just drama, it was almost inevitable. And let's be honest, Jacob didn't do much to help the situation. Jacob's house was like a reality show, without cameras, but with plenty of drama. There were competitions, secret alliances, cliques, and of course, that one contestant everyone loves to hate. And guess what? Joseph was that guy. Picture this. Joseph wakes up early, puts on his colorful robe, eats breakfast while his brothers already look annoyed, and then decides to share a new dream every morning. No wonder the tension kept rising. If the brothers had a group chat, it would definitely be called surviving favoritism. And to make things worse, Jacob wasn't just their dad. He was the boss of the family business. So when he told Joseph to do something, it was like saying, "Look how responsible he is. Learn from him." Spoiler, nobody likes being compared, especially when the example is the youngest and favorite sibling. But hold on, the story is just getting started. If you think you've seen complicated families, just wait until Joseph's dreams come into play. And before we wrap up, here's a question for you. If you were one of Joseph's brothers, how would you react to all this favoritism? Would you be in the let it go group or the this isn't over team? In the next episode, we'll find out how Joseph's dreams made his brothers even more jealous and set off a chain of events worthy of a binge. So don't go anywhere, because that colorful robe is just getting started. Episode 2, The Dreams and the Brothers' Jealousy. If you think you've ever had a weird dream, get ready to meet Joseph, the world champion of dreams that stir up family drama. Because, let's face it, dreaming is normal, but sharing every detail with people who already don't like you, that's just asking for trouble. Picture this: breakfast at Jacob's house. 11 brothers trying to grab the last piece of bread, and Joseph shows up, colorful robe shining, ready to share last night's dream. If group chats existed back then, there'd be a special mute button just for Joseph's messages. Joseph starts, "Guys, I had an amazing dream. We were all out in the field, tying up bundles of grain. Suddenly, my bundles stood upright, and all your bundles gathered around and bowed down to mine." Awkward silence. You know that moment when everyone pretends they didn't hear? That was it, but deep down, each brother was already counting how many patience points they had left. And it doesn't stop there. The next day, another dream, another announcement. I dreamed the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Now, it wasn't just the brothers who were annoyed. Even Jacob and Rachel started to wonder. No parent likes to hear that they'll be bowing down to their youngest son, not even in a dream. Pause and reflect. Have you ever told a story, excited, only to realize no one else found it funny? Or worse, everyone just got irritated. Joseph was a pro at this. To be fair, he didn't mean any harm. He was just a pumped-up teenager with no filter, thinking everyone would be as amazed by his dreams as he was. Spoiler: no one was. The brothers' jealousy, already at yellow alert, now went full code red. They started seeing Joseph not just as the favorite, but as a threat. Who did this kid think he was, saying everyone would bow down to? him one day. If it were today, there would have been a mass unfollow on all social media. Jacob, the dad, was also left thinking. He even scolded Joseph for exaggerating, but deep down, he was intrigued. If there's one thing Jacob knew, it was that sometimes dreams mean something. After all, he'd had his own wild experiences with God. But like any good dad, he kept his doubts to himself and pretended everything was under control. Meanwhile, the brothers started plotting. Not full-on soap opera plans yet, but the vibe was we need to do something. They began avoiding Joseph, talking behind his back, and of course, feeding the jealousy. Let's be honest, nothing brings a group together like a common enemy. And right then, Joseph was the perfect target. Think about it. Have you ever been part of a group that only exists to complain about someone? You don't have to answer out loud, but everyone's been there. In Jacob's house, the trend was to complain about the dreamer. The surviving favoritism group now had a new agenda: how to deal with Joseph's dreams. And Joseph, he kept living in his own world, or better yet, his dream world. He didn't notice how annoyed his brothers were. Maybe, he thought, they'd understand. Or maybe he was just enjoying the attention, even if it was negative. After all, being the center of attention, for better or worse, was something he was used to. But, as in every good story, the tension kept rising. The brothers started avoiding Joseph, even during chores. If he went one way, they went the other. If he talked, they pretended not to hear. And every new dream was just another reason for a round of dirty looks. And you, listener, have you ever thought about the power a simple dream can have? Sometimes it's just your mind wandering. Other times, it's the start of a major life change. For Joseph, his dreams were more than just nighttime adventures. They were clues about what was to come. Too bad no one noticed in time. Here's the thing, even with all the jealousy, no one had the guts to confront Joseph directly. It was like a Cold War, everyone knowing things would go bad, but no one wanting to make the first move. Meanwhile, Joseph kept dreaming, sharing, and unknowingly digging his own hole in the end. Joseph's dreams became the spark for everything that would follow. They didn't just reveal what was in his brothers' hearts, they set the stage for one of the Bible's most incredible stories. If you think the worst is over, get ready. What's coming next is worthy of a popcorn marathon. So, if you were one of Joseph's brothers, what would you do? Ignore the dreams or start plotting something? And if you were Joseph, would you keep sharing everything or learn to keep a secret? In the next episode, you'll see what happens when jealousy crosses the line and Joseph's family makes a decision that will change the dreamer's life forever. Don't miss it, because Joseph's adventure is just getting started, and honestly, nobody knows where this story will end. Episode 3: Joseph sold as a slave and life in Egypt. If you think you've ever had a bad day, it's probably because you haven't heard what happened to Joseph after his infamous dreams. Some people wake up on the wrong side of the bed, but Joseph woke up with all his brothers in a bad mood and a plan that was anything but friendly. It all started as just another day in Jacob's house. The brothers were out in the field, tending the flocks, and Jacob, being the classic worried and, let's be honest, a bit biased dad, decided to send Joseph to check on his brother's work. Nothing like sending your favorite child to supervise the ones who already can't stand him, right? If there were a Rate Your Boss app back then, Jacob would have gotten a low score just for this decision. Joseph, colorful robe on and ready, heads out to the field. Of course, the brothers spot him from a distance, his robe shining in the sun, and the conversation heats up. "Here comes the dreamer," someone says, probably rolling their eyes. If there were dramatic background music, this would be the time to play it. Then comes the plan. It wasn't just jealousy anymore. It was a real desire to solve the Joseph problem once and for all. First, they thought about something drastic, but Reuben, the oldest, had a flash of conscience and suggested just throwing Joseph into an empty cistern. Yes, a cistern, because nothing says brotherly love like tossing someone into a pit. Joseph arrives, maybe expecting a hug or at least a good morning, but what does he get? An ambush. The brothers rip off his colorful robe. Finally, someone solved the wardrobe issue. Throw Joseph into the pit and then sit down to eat lunch. Yes, because after a family kidnapping, nothing calms the nerves like a snack. Pause for reflection. Have you ever had a day where everything went wrong, but in the middle of the chaos, someone decides it's time to eat? In the Bible, even the villains need a lunch break. Meanwhile, Joseph is literally at the bottom of the pit. Merchants on their way to Egypt. Judah, another brother, has a business idea. Why don't we sell Joseph? That way we don't have to get our hands dirty and we make some money. And just like that, the first sibling trade in history is born. They sell Joseph for 20 pieces of silver. If you've ever felt undervalued, imagine being sold for less than a concert ticket. Joseph, now without his robe and his dignity, is taken by the Ishmaelites on the way to Egypt. As he's led away, the brothers come up with a cover-up. They take the robe, dip it in goat's blood, and bring it to Jacob, pretending a wild animal attacked his favorite son. Jacob is devastated, tears his clothes, mourns, and falls into deep grief. And the brothers, they go on with life as if nothing happened. United family, not so much. Now, let's follow Joseph. Imagine the shock. One day you're the favorite at home. The next, you're chained up and heading to a foreign country. Egypt was the center of the ancient world, full of pyramids, pharaohs, and, of course, sand everywhere. For Joseph, everything was new and terrifying. He didn't speak the language, didn't know anyone, and, worst of all, didn't even have his colorful robe to feel special. But Joseph had something no one could take, his faith. Even in the worst scenario, he believed God was with him. And, let's be honest, it takes a lot of courage to keep hope alive when everything seems lost. Have you ever had a moment when everything fell apart, but somehow you managed to believe things would get better? Joseph was a master at that. In Egypt, Joseph is sold to Potiphar, an important official of Pharaoh. New owner, new house, new rules. If he was the favorite before, now he was just another slave. But here's the thing, Joseph didn't let it break him. He worked hard, did everything with excellence, and quickly caught Potiphar's attention. Because even far from home, people with real talent always stand out. Here's a motivational moment. Sometimes life takes everything from you, but no one can steal your attitude. Joseph lost his family, his robe, and his freedom, but he kept his integrity, and that made all the difference. Now, a what-if moment. How would you react if your own family betrayed you and you had to start over in a place where no one knew you? Would you be bitter, dramatic, Or would you try to rebuild? Joseph chose not to play the victim. That's why he started to turn things around, even in chaos. Meanwhile, back at the brothers' camp, the mood was tense and secretive. No one talked about Joseph, but everyone knew the lie had an expiration date. Jacob, on the other hand, was lost in deep sadness. The once noisy house was now just silence and mourning, and Joseph's dreams, they seemed to have become nightmares. But, like any good story, nothing is final. Egypt, which seemed like the end of the road, was just the beginning of a new journey. For Joseph, sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are. And you, listener, have you ever felt like someone wanted to sell you off just to get rid of you? How would you start over from scratch, with nothing, in a place where no one knows your name? And more importantly, could you keep your faith and hope alive? In the next episode, we'll see how Joseph handles life in Potiphar's house, facing temptations, traps, and, of course, another round of drama worthy of a soap opera. So get ready, because Joseph's adventure is just heating up, and honestly, he's still got a lot of surprises in store. Episode 4: The House of Potiphar and the False Accusation. Have you ever felt like just when things start to get better, life decides to test your patience? Joseph knows the feeling. After being sold as a slave, losing his family, his robe, and almost his hope, he finally found some stability in Potiphar's house. But, as in every good drama, calm never lasts long. Potiphar was a big shot in Egypt, captain of Pharaoh's guard. Not just anybody. Right away, he noticed Joseph was different. Joseph wasn't just another slave. He was dedicated, honest, and, let's be real, had that main character energy. Potiphar liked Joseph so much, he put him in charge of his entire household. Imagine the trust, from new slave to general manager of the mansion. If LinkedIn existed back then, Joseph's profile would be blowing up. And it wasn't just Potiphar who noticed Joseph. Potiphar's wife, who doesn't get a name in the Bible but definitely deserves a villain title, also noticed the new manager's charm. That's where the drama begins. She started hitting on Joseph day after day. You know, that kind of persistence that's already way past awkward. That was it. Joseph, loyal to God and his boss, refused every advance. I can't betray my master or sin against God. That's integrity. Pause for reflection. Have you ever been in a situation where saying no was the right thing, but also the hardest? Joseph was there, far from home, with no one to defend him, and still kept his character. He could have taken the easy way out, but chose what was right. Spoiler: doing the right thing doesn't always bring instant rewards. Potiphar's wife, frustrated by Joseph's refusals, decided to set a trap. One day, when no one else was home, she grabbed Joseph and tried to force him. He panicked, ran away, and left his cloak behind. That's when the story flipped upside down. With Joseph's cloak in her hands, she screamed, called the servants, and made up a story. Joseph tried to attack me. The drama was set. Potiphar came home, heard his wife's version, and was furious. Who would doubt their own wife? No chance for Joseph to defend himself. No witnesses. Nothing. Joseph was thrown in prison on the spot. From mansion manager to prisoner, all in one move. If social media existed, Joseph would have been instantly canceled. Think about it. Have you ever been accused of something you didn't do? felt the frustration of watching everything fall apart because of a lie. Joseph felt that double. He did everything right, was loyal, worked hard, and still ended up behind bars. If this were a soap opera, this would be the moment to shout injustice at the screen. But Joseph didn't let it break him. Even in prison, he kept his attitude. And guess what? The warden noticed Joseph was different. Soon, Joseph was helping run the prison, taking care of the other inmates, and earning trust. Wherever Joseph went, he found a way to be useful. If there were an Employee of the Month award in Egypt, Joseph would have a collection. Here's a lesson worth writing down. Doing the right thing won't always keep you out of trouble, but it will keep your conscience clear. Joseph knew he was being wronged, but didn't let bitterness take over. He chose to keep being himself, even when no one was watching. Meanwhile, outside, Potiphar probably had his doubts. Joseph had never given him a reason to distrust, but to keep peace at home, he didn't dig any deeper. And Potiphar's wife, she stuck to her story like nothing happened. Sometimes, people would rather believe a convenient lie than a difficult truth. And you, listener, how would you react if you were in Joseph's place? Would you keep your faith or lose hope? Would you keep doing good, even without recognition, or just give up? Prison, which seemed like the end of the road, was just another chapter in Joseph's journey. Instead of becoming bitter, he chose to bloom where he was planted. Deep down, he knew God still had plans for him, even when everything seemed lost. In the next episode, you'll see how Joseph, even in prison, became a blessing to those around him. And you'll meet two characters who will change the course of this story: Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Don't miss it, because Joseph's saga is far from over, and honestly, every twist just makes it more interesting. Episode 5: Time in Prison and the Interpretation of Dreams. If you think you've ever been stuck in a tough spot, try imagining being literally locked up in an ancient Egyptian prison. No lawyer, no Sunday visits, not even a game on your phone to pass the time. Just stone walls, bars, and, of course, plenty of stories to tell. Joseph, our main character, had lost family, robe, job, and reputation. Now, he was behind bars, paying for a crime he didn't commit. If this happened today, he'd probably become a meme. When you just want to work in peace, but life puts you in prison. But unlike many who would have rebelled, Joseph decided to make the prison his new workplace. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade, or in Joseph's case, organize the prison. The chief jailer, who wasn't stupid, quickly noticed Joseph was different. He was trustworthy, organized, and, above all, didn't complain. Soon, Joseph earned the jailer's trust and began helping run the prison, taking care of the other prisoners. He was like the HR manager of the jail, resolving conflicts, assigning tasks, and even listening to complaints. If LinkedIn existed in prison, Joseph's profile would be full of 5-star recommendations. Pause for reflection. Have you ever tried to improve a bad environment just to keep your sanity? Joseph was that kind of person. He could have given in to bitterness, but chose to be useful. And honestly, that makes all the difference. Because even in prison, Joseph didn't stop being himself. It was in this setting that two new characters entered the story: Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Yes, even the king of Egypt had employees going through tough times. Nobody is immune to a moody boss, not even in the palace. The cupbearer and baker fell out of favor with Pharaoh and ended up in the same prison as Joseph. Coincidence? Maybe. But in the Bible, coincidences usually have a bigger purpose. One night, both the cupbearer and the baker had strange dreams, the kind that make you wake up sweating and wondering, what does this mean? The next day, Joseph noticed their gloomy faces and asked, "What's wrong? You look like you saw a ghost." They told him about the dreams and said there was no one to interpret them. Here comes one of the most memorable moments in Joseph's story. Without hesitation, he said, "Interpretations belong to God. Tell me your dreams." Bold move. Even in prison, Joseph didn't lose faith or confidence that God was still with him. And let's be honest, it takes courage to offer help when everything seems lost. The cupbearer told his dream first. He saw a grapevine with 3 branches that blossomed and produced grapes. He squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup and served. The king, Joseph, with the look of an expert, said, "In 3 days, you will be restored to your position and serve Pharaoh again." The cupbearer breathed a sigh of relief, probably already planning his comeback. The baker, encouraged by the good news for his friend, told his dream next. He carried 3 baskets of bread on his head, but birds came and ate everything. Joseph, always honest, didn't sugarcoat it. "In 3 days, you will be executed, and the birds will eat your flesh." Tense moment. If there were suspense music, this would be it. Pause for reflection. Would you have the courage to deliver news like that? Joseph didn't shy away from responsibility. Sometimes the truth is hard to hear, but it needs to be said. Once again, he showed that integrity doesn't depend on circumstances. 3 days later, everything happened exactly as Joseph said. The cupbearer was restored to his position, and the baker met a tragic end. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph made a request. "When you are before Pharaoh, remember me. Tell the king about me so I can get out of this prison." A simple plea, almost a desperate hope for justice. But, like in every good story, the cupbearer forgot Joseph as soon as he returned to the palace. You know that friend who promises to help but disappears when you need them most. Joseph waited, day after day, month after month, but no freedom came. Time passed, but Joseph never lost hope. Here's another lesson. Sometimes the answer you expect doesn't come when you want it. Sometimes people forget, plans change, and life seems stuck. But even then, it's not worth giving up. Joseph stayed in prison for 2 more years, but kept believing God had something greater prepared. Meanwhile, outside, Egypt went on with its rhythm. Pharaoh had no idea that inside the prison was a man who would change the fate of a whole nation. And Joseph, forgotten by men, was not forgotten by God. And you, listener, have you ever felt forgotten, even when doing everything right? Ever been stuck in a situation with no way out? Joseph shows that even when everything seems still, God is working behind the scenes. In the next episode, get ready for a plot twist, worthy of an award-winning series. Pharaoh will have mysterious dreams, and only one person will be able to solve the puzzle. Could it finally be Joseph's time to leave prison? Don't miss it, because the twist is coming, and honestly, no one will want to miss this chapter. Episode 6, Joseph's Rise as Governor of Egypt. Have you ever had a dream where everything changes overnight? One day you're at rock bottom, the next you're on top of the world. That's exactly the kind of plot twist Joseph lived in. Need to wake up, because this was real life. After years in prison, forgotten by the cupbearer who promised to help, Joseph was about to discover that when God decides to move, no one stays still. It all started with a restless night in Pharaoh's palace. The king of Egypt, used to banquets, pyramids, and all the luxury you can imagine, had two dreams that left him sleepless and anxious. In the first, 7 fat cows came out of the Nile, followed by 7 skinny cows that devoured the fat ones. In the second, 7 healthy heads of grain were swallowed up by 7 thin, scorched heads. Pharaoh woke up in a cold sweat. Like any good leader in crisis, he called in all the magicians and wise men of Egypt to interpret the dreams. Spoiler, nobody had a clue. Not even Google could help. That's when, finally, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. Yes, the same cupbearer who forgot about his friend for 2 years. You know that moment when the penny drops. Your Majesty, there's a guy in prison who interpreted my dream and the baker's, and it happened exactly as he said. Pharaoh, not wasting any time, ordered Joseph to be brought immediately, is suddenly summoned to stand before the most powerful man in the world. Before going, Joseph shaves, changes clothes, and gets ready. After all, nobody wants to meet Pharaoh looking like they just rolled out of a prison cell. When he arrives, Pharaoh gets straight to the point. I heard you can interpret dreams. Joseph, humble as always, replies, I can't do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. That's the confidence of someone who knows who's really in charge. Pharaoh tells his dreams, and Joseph doesn't hesitate. He explains, the 7 fat cows and the 7 healthy heads of grain are 7 years of abundance coming to Egypt. The 7 skinny cows and the 7 scorched heads are 7 years of famine that will follow. God is warning Pharaoh to get ready. Joseph goes further and suggests a plan. Choose a wise man to oversee Egypt, store food during the years of plenty, and make sure the people survive the famine. Pharaoh is amazed. Nobody else gave such a clear and practical answer. In a life-changing moment, Pharaoh looks at Joseph and says, since God has shown you all this, there's no one wiser than you. From now on, you'll be governor of Egypt. Only I, on the throne, will be greater than you. Just like that, Joseph goes from prisoner to governor in a single day. If LinkedIn existed, Joseph's profile would be blowing up with connections. Pause for reflection. Can you imagine being promoted overnight, from forgotten to indispensable? Joseph didn't just get a new job, he got a new Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah, fine linen clothes, Pharaoh's ring, and even an official chariot. To top it off, he was given a wife, Asenath, daughter of a prominent priest. The kid who was once sold as a slave was now the second most powerful man in Egypt. If that's not a twist, what is? Joseph didn't waste time. During the 7 years of abundance, he traveled all over Egypt, organized storehouses, and stockpiled grain to prepare for what was coming. The people thrived, the cities overflowed with food, and everyone thought life would be an endless party. But Joseph knew tough times were ahead. When the 7 years of famine hit, Egypt was ready. While other countries suffered, Egypt had plenty, thanks to Joseph's wisdom and planning. In the midst of all this success, Joseph had 2 sons, Manasseh, which means God has made me forget all my trouble. And Ephraim, God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. The irony is clear. The place of pain became the stage for blessing. Think about it. Could you stay humble after a turnaround like that? Joseph didn't let power go to his head. He remembered where he came from, the pit, the prison, the injustice. Even at the top, he kept serving, planning, and caring for everyone. And you, listener, have you ever dreamed of a turnaround like that? Sometimes the waiting period is just preparation for something much bigger. God is setting the stage for a new beginning. In the next episode, get ready for reunions, strong emotions, and a hefty dose of family drama. Joseph's brothers will show up at Egypt's door, hungry and clueless about who's running the show. And honestly, nobody knows what can happen when the past knocks on the door of the present. Episode 7, The Reunion with the Brothers and Forgiveness. Picture this. Egypt has become the center of the world. There's food, there are lines, and people from everywhere are trying to survive the famine. And who's in charge of the grain? Joseph, the former dreamer from the pit, now dressed in fine linen, with a ring on his finger and an Egyptian accent. If you think you've ever experienced a plot twist, Joseph is here to prove that life can always get more interesting. Meanwhile, back in Canaan, Jacob's family is in trouble. The food is gone, desperation is real, and there's no delivery app to help. Jacob, tired of all the family drama, looks at his sons and drops the classic dad line, "Why are you just standing around? Go to Egypt and buy some food." Off go Joseph's 10 brothers, hungry and not exactly cheerful, heading to the land of pyramids. Pause for reflection. Have you ever had to face someone from your past after a big mess? Imagine the tension. The brothers arrive in Egypt and, of course, go straight to the man in charge of food distribution. They bow before Joseph, not even dreaming that the powerful governor is the brother they sold years ago. Irony or perfect script? You decide. Joseph recognizes his brothers immediately, but instead of revealing himself, he decides to test their honesty. Who wouldn't be curious to see if the brothers had changed? He speaks to them through an interpreter just to keep the mystery and starts firing questions. Where are you from? How many are in your family? Is there anyone else at home? The brothers, nervous, spill everything. We're from Canaan. We're 12 brothers. One stayed with our father and the other, well, disappeared. Disappeared, Joseph almost laughs. If there was a group chat, he'd send a wide-eyed emoji. Joseph then accuses them of being spies. They panic. No, sir, we're honest men. Honest is a strong word for guys who once sold their own brother, don't you think? Joseph has them all thrown in jail for 3 days, just to let the drama sink in. Then he releases 9 and keeps Simeon in prison, demanding they bring Benjamin, the youngest brother, as proof they're telling the truth. The brothers return home with food, but also with a heavy conscience. On the way, they discovered the money they paid was put back in their sacks. Now, on top of guilt, they're paranoid. Will they think we stole it? Jacob, hearing that Benjamin must go to Egypt, goes into full protective mode. I already lost Joseph. Now you want to take Benjamin. What's next? My credit card. The hunger gets worse. The food runs out, and there's no choice. Benjamin has to go. Judah, the same brother who suggested selling Joseph years ago, now promises to protect the youngest at all costs. Amazing how time changes people, or at least forces them to make promises. Back in Egypt, the brothers present themselves to Joseph, this time with Benjamin. When Joseph sees his youngest brother, he almost loses it. He leaves the room to cry in private, washes his face, and returns with his governor mask back on. He prepares a banquet for everyone, but makes sure Benjamin gets 5 times as much food, testing for jealousy. Anyone. Joseph wanted to see if his brothers still envied the favorite son. After the banquet, another test. Joseph orders his silver cup to be hidden in Benjamin's sack, and when the brothers are on their way home, his servants chase them down. Accusation of theft, tension in the air. Everyone is dragged back to the palace. Joseph says only Benjamin will stay as a slave. The others can go. Judah then gives an emotional speech, offering himself in Benjamin's place. We can't go home without Benjamin. Our father wouldn't survive. That's when Joseph can't take it anymore. He sends everyone out of the room, reveals his identity, and cries so loudly the whole palace hears. I am Joseph, the brother you sold. Total silence. The brothers turn pale, waiting for payback. But instead of revenge, Joseph offers forgiveness. Don't be afraid. God sent me ahead of you to save lives. Pause for reflection. Could you have a heart like that? After everything, Joseph chose to forgive. He found purpose where there was only pain. And honestly, that's rare. He hugs his brothers, cries with them, and invites the whole family to live in Egypt, where there would be plenty of food and plenty of reconciliation. In the next episode, get ready for more reunions, a big family move, and Jacob's arrival in Egypt. If you think family drama ends easily, you haven't seen the end of this story. And you, listener, have you ever forgiven someone who really hurt you? Or are you still waiting for the right moment to get even? Joseph shows that sometimes forgiveness is the biggest plot twist of all. Episode 8, Jacob's Arrival and Family Reconciliation. Picture the moment after years of longing, secrets, and drama. The day finally comes when past and present collide. Canaan is in crisis. Egypt is the center of the world, and in the middle of all this chaos, one family full of unresolved issues prepares for the biggest move of their lives. If you think moving to a new city is complicated, imagine moving to a new country with your entire family, herds, baggage, and, of course, a truckload of emotions. Jacob, the patriarch, is no longer a young man full of energy. Time has passed, wrinkles have come, and his heart carries the weight of many losses. He still feels the absence of Joseph, the son he believed was dead for years. But suddenly, everything changes. His sons return from Egypt with news that seems impossible. Father, Joseph is alive. And not only that, he's the governor of Egypt. If there had been a blood pressure monitor back then, Jacob would have needed it right away. At first, Jacob doesn't believe it. Who would? But the insistence of his sons, the gifts sent by Joseph, and above all, the hunger that won't let up, convince the old patriarch to pack up. And what a move. It wasn't just hopping on a bus and heading out. It was gathering the whole family's sons, grandkids, servants, animals, sand, crossing the desert into the unknown. If there were a moving checklist, Jacob's would be as long as a scroll before leaving. Jacob does something crucial. He stops in Beersheba to offer sacrifices to God. He seeks guidance because changing your whole life overnight isn't easy. God speaks to Jacob in a dream, saying, "Don't be afraid to go down to Egypt. I will make you into a great nation there." That's the push Jacob needed. When God says go, no desert can hold you back. The journey is long, exhausting, and full of anticipation. Imagine the anxiety. Every step brings Jacob closer to the reunion with his lost son. Finally, the big moment arrives. Joseph, knowing his father is on the way, gets his royal chariot ready and goes out to meet Jacob. When they see each other, there are no speeches, just emotion. Joseph throws himself into his father's arms and weeps, so much that even the Egyptians probably wanted to join the hug. Pause for reflection. Have you ever reunited with someone after a long time? That hug that seems to heal all wounds. That's what it was like for Jacob and Joseph. Time doesn't erase love, and forgiveness can transform even the most painful stories. Now begins the second season of this family's life, adapting to Egypt. Joseph introduces his family to Pharaoh, who generously offers them the best land. In Egypt, the region of Goshen, it wasn't just any spot. It was fertile, perfect for raising herds and starting over. If there was a relocation program, Joseph would have been the best agent ever. Jacob, even in old age, impresses Pharaoh. The king asks how old he is, and Jacob answers with the wisdom of someone who has seen it all. "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. Pharaoh must have thought, "This guy has survived a lot," and he had the seat. Escapes, fights, losses, and now, finally, reconciliation. Jacob's family thrives in Goshen. They have food, work, peace, and, for the first time in a long while, they're together again. But don't think the drama is over. Before he dies, Jacob insists on blessing each of his sons and grandsons. And, as always, he surprises everyone. He crosses his hands and gives the greater blessing to the younger grandson, Ephraim, instead of Manasseh, the oldest. Tradition, not in Jacob's family. There's always a plot twist. Joseph, being a good son, cares for his father until the end. They talk, remember the past, and Jacob makes a special request. "When I die, bury me in Canaan with my ancestors." Joseph promises, because he knows that, despite everything, the family's roots are still there, in the promised land. Here's a moment for reflection. How often does reconciliation require courage to face the past, deal with pain, and still choose love? Jacob and Joseph show that even after years of separation, it's possible to start again. Meanwhile, Egypt is still dealing with famine, but Jacob's family is safe thanks to Joseph's wisdom and forgiveness. They learn to live with a new culture, new customs, and the fact that their youngest brother is now basically the vice king of the country. If Instagram existed, their family photos would have captions like, "From the pit to the palace, who would have thought?" But it's not all sunshine. There are still insecurities, memories of the past, and the question, did Joseph really forgive his brothers? Is there any resentment left? Time will show that Joseph's forgiveness is real, but his brother's insecurity is too. They still worry that, after Jacob's death, Joseph might take revenge. Family drama, biblical edition. In the next episode, we'll follow Joseph's final years, Jacob's last blessings, and how this family becomes the seed of the 12 tribes of Israel. If you think this story has already had enough emotion, just wait to see the legacy it leaves for the world. And you, listener, have you ever thought about starting over somewhere new? Have you felt the power of a true reunion? Or are you still waiting for the right moment to forgive and rebuild? Saga of Joseph and Jacob shows that, even after all the pain, there's always room for a new beginning. Episode 9, Joseph's Final Years and the Legacy for the Tribes of Israel. If you thought that after so much drama, twists, and emotion, Joseph's life would finally settle down, think again. In the Bible, even the ending is packed with meaning. And honestly, Joseph wouldn't be Joseph if he didn't leave a legacy for the generations to come. After everything he lived through, the colorful robe, the pit, the slave caravan, Potiphar's house, prison, the palace, the family reunion, Joseph finally could breathe. He became Pharaoh's right hand, saved Egypt from famine, brought his family to Goshen, and watched his children grow up in a foreign land. If LinkedIn existed back then, Joseph's profile would be the most envied in the Middle East. But even at the height of power, Joseph never forgot where he came from. He was the son of Jacob, grandson of Isaac, great-grandson of Abraham, and as comfortable as life in Egypt was, he knew the family's true home was Canaan, the promised land. That sense of belonging, of having roots, was something Joseph made sure to pass on to his children and brothers. Speaking of children, Joseph had two, Manasseh and Ephraim. And as always, Jacob's family didn't follow the traditional script. When it was time to bless the grandsons, Jacob crossed his hands and gave the greater blessing to the younger, Ephraim, instead of Manasseh, the oldest. Joseph tried to correct his father, but Jacob insisted the younger will be greater than the older. If you thought favoritism was a thing of the past, here's proof that tradition is just a detail for this family. The years went by, Jacob grew old and felt his time was near. He gathered all his sons for final blessings, and each received a prophetic word, some encouraging, some not so much. Joseph, of course, received a special blessing, recognizing his faithfulness, resilience, and key role in saving the family. Jacob asked to be buried in Canaan, and Joseph, loyal to his father's last wish, arranged everything so Jacob's body returned to the land of his ancestors. Imagine the scene, a grand funeral procession with Egyptians, Israelites, and lots of emotion. If there were live streaming, it would be trending worldwide. After Jacob's death, fear returned to Joseph's brothers. They thought, now that Dad is gone, will Joseph take revenge? The past still weighed heavily, and guilt doesn't disappear overnight. They went to Joseph, bowed down, and asked for forgiveness once more. Joseph, with his huge heart, replied, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You planned evil against me, but God turned it into good to save many lives." If there were an award for emotional maturity, Joseph would win hands down. Life went on. Joseph's brothers settled in Egypt. Their families grew, and the 12 tribes of Israel began to take shape. Joseph saw his children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren grow up. He became a kind of patriarch, advisor, and symbol of hope for everyone. And even with all the prosperity, he never lost faith that one day the people of Israel would return to Canaan before dying. Joseph made a request to his brothers. When God comes to help you and brings you out of Egypt, take my bones with you. He knew Egypt was just a stop, not the final destination. That request became a promise, passed down from generation to generation, until Moses, centuries later, fulfilled Joseph's wish and carried his bones back to the promised land. Pause for reflection. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? Joseph didn't just leave behind riches or titles, but a story of faith, forgiveness, and hope. He showed that even in the worst moments, you can trust that God is writing something bigger. Sometimes, what looks like a tragedy is just the beginning of an amazing plan. Looking back, you'll see that Joseph's saga is, above all, a story about family, new beginnings, and purpose. He was betrayed, humiliated, forgotten, but never stopped believing his life had meaning. That's why he became an inspiration for generations. And you, listener, have you thought about the impact your choices can have on the future? Have you realized that even on hard days, your example could be what changes someone's life? Joseph teaches us that the real legacy isn't in riches, but in what we leave engraved on people's hearts. In the next episode, we'll wrap up this season with a look to the future. What happens after Joseph? How does his family's story set the stage for the next chapters of the Bible? And, of course, that irresistible teaser, so you won't want to miss the next journey. After all, if there's one thing we've learned from Joseph, it's that life is full of ups and downs, but it's always worth trusting the author of the story. Joseph's legacy and the start of a new journey. It's time to close the curtain on this season. But as with every great story, the end is just the beginning of something even bigger. If you followed every episode, you already know Joseph's life went far beyond a tale of overcoming. It was a masterclass in resilience, forgiveness, purpose, and faith. Ingredients that never go out of style. Whether you're in the desert, the palace, or just living your own daily life, think of everything Joseph went through. He was rejected, sold, falsely accused, forgotten by people who promised to help, but he never lost hope. He didn't let the wounds of the past define his future. On the contrary, he turned every pain into a lesson, every fall into a step up, every tear into fuel to keep going. Joseph shows us that it doesn't matter how deep the pit is, or how long the prison sentence, or how endless the waiting feels. What matters is knowing that God is writing a bigger story, even when we don't understand the script. Joseph didn't seek revenge, didn't hold a grudge, and didn't use his power to humiliate, but to restore. That's why his name has crossed generations as a symbol of forgiveness and hope. So, listener, what's your pit today? What's the prison that feels like it has no exit? Maybe you're waiting for a miracle, an answer, a new beginning. Maybe you've thought about giving up, or you think no one sees what you're going through. But Joseph's story reminds you, even when everything seems stuck, God is working behind the scenes. Life isn't just about colorful robes and happy endings. There are days of torn robes, hidden tears, and postponed dreams. But there are also days of reunion, tight hugs, and fulfilled promises. Even if you can't see it now, the author of your story never loses control of the pen. Joseph's legacy isn't just in full storehouses, titles, or riches. It's in the ability to forgive, to start over, to believe that good can overcome evil. It's in the courage to look forward, even when the past keeps pulling you back. And to wrap up, nothing sums up what we've learned from Joseph better than this verse. Write it down, because this is one to keep in your heart. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Genesis 52:20. That's the essence of Joseph's journey. Evil does not have the final word. There is always room for a new beginning, for grace, for purpose, and, of course, here's that teaser everyone loves. The story doesn't end here. Egypt, which was a refuge for Joseph's family, will one day become the stage for new challenges, oppression, miracles, and deliverance. Because when you least expect it, a new protagonist will appear, a baby in a basket floating down the Nile. But that, dear listener, is a story for the next season. If you enjoyed this journey, get ready, because the saga of Moses is coming. A story of courage, faith, and deliverance that will make you rethink what it means to trust God when everything seems impossible. Thank you for traveling with us from the pit to the palace, from despair to hope, from pain to forgiveness. May Joseph's story inspire you to never give up, to forgive without limits, and to believe that, in the end, God always turns evil into good. See you next season, and remember, your story is still being written.